Okay. All right, we're going to reconvene the meeting, special meeting, and then we're going to go ahead and to adjourn the special meeting. So now that's over, we're going to go ahead and begin our regular town commission meeting for the month of February. And I welcome everybody. We've already done our Pledge of Allegiance and our roll call. So I just want to go ahead and begin with our additions, deletions, modifications, and approval of agenda.
So we're gonna modify it.
Well, we're going to modify the agenda to start to have a conversation regarding the shade meeting that we just had. And we'll conclude that and have a motion on that, what we came to agreement in the shade meeting.
Right.
I think you would like to move item number 15 up to, I guess, right after public comment. That would be my suggestion. So if you want to move item 15 up to the spot right after public comment, and then we can address it at that point in time.
We don't want to keep Mr. Henry here for,
Well, I think let's move it right after public comment.
all right, we'll move it right after public comment.
Yeah.
So we need a motion.
I'll help you out.
I appreciate
I move that we take item number 15 on our agenda from 15 and move it to the first right after public comment.
Are you ready?
Is it right after public comment, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Second.
All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right,
And that's only because of professional courtesy.
now are we going to? All right, so who wants to make a motion to approve the agenda now?
I will move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
So, is this motion a second? Any other comment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. All right, public comment. Ladies first, Jerry.
Marilee Lundquist, 6277 North Ocean Boulevard. And last month, I attended a meeting at McCormick, and usually we get special permission for parking, extra parking. So I parked on Island Drive, and when I came out, I was met with 2 police cars. And I had parked badly. I parked kind of on a blind curve. And what I found out was that they had called my husband. They couldn't get him. The police called my son in Minnesota, who had no idea what his mother was doing. And I did get a parking ticket for $30. And I just wanted to say thank you so much, because I was so impressed with how thorough the police were to try to find out if I was okay. And, that's one of the benefits of living here, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Marilee. Thank you, Chief. There's always a silver lining in that ticket cloud.
I'll pass the accolades on to those that were there. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry?
Jerry Garay, 130 Allen Drive. Just want to give you a quick report on the meeting this morning. It was the P&Z Commission acting as the Architectural Review Board for the very first time. And I would report to you all that it was a productive meeting, a good meeting. We learned a lot, and for example, one of the things that came up, just so you have a feel for what we're looking at and responded to, was window proportions. And the applicant was very gracious about acknowledging our suggestions and agreed to take a second look at it. What we did learn and want to report to you is that there were some things that might evolve as a work in progress, and perhaps your consideration to amend the method of proceeding. For example, adding perhaps giving notice to the neighbors, as opposed to just general notice in the town agenda. Number one. Number two, maybe having applicants provide some graphic information on we could see it on the screen and get a feel for something other than just the black and white line drawings. But it was good. I think more to follow, but so far so good and a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry.
All right, anyone else for public comment? Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Is there approval?
Well, it's item number 15, I'm sorry.
We're gonna do
Oh,
item
yeah, we're gonna
15
do
then
15
before the
first?
consent.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Okay, well, if I can, I'll just quickly go through.
Well, he's gotta come up and tell us all his,
I'm hearing some feedback on audio.
you gotta
This-
go through the
this-
whole motions, you know.
This is the settlement of the Cooksey case where it involved Mr. Cooksey suing the town for claiming that our codes that we had cited him under were unconstitutional. And the settlement that is proposed by our insurance carrier involves the payment of the lien amount, which is $7,800 and some change, payment of costs to Mr. Cooksey of $381.20 with the condition that there will be language in the settlement agreement that Mr. Cooksey must pay the entire lien off to the town within a certain period of time. So if that is, then I don't know if Mr. Henry wants to add anything, he certainly can, or if you all have any questions of Mr. Henry. But that is, that's my understanding of what the settlement would be if you choose to go forward with it. And that, once again, that is the settlement that is proposed by the town's insurance carrier. And under our insurance policy with the carrier, we are required to consent to the settlement for them to proceed forward with that.
No, Brian recited exactly what the settlement terms are, subject to everything else that was discussed during the shade meeting.
Any questions for Mr. Henry? No. All right, hearing none, someone make motion to accept settlement offer?
I'll make a motion to accept the offer as explained by our town attorney.
I have a second.
Motion is second. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Henry.
you.
All right, moving on to the approval of the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion is second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, announcement and proclamations. The town hall will be closed on Monday, February 19th, 2018, in observance of President's Day. The League of Women Voters and the Town of Ocean Ridge are sponsoring a Town Commissioner Candidates Forum on Wednesday, February 21st, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Town Hall. Residents of Ocean Ridge are welcome to attend and are encouraged to bring a question to submit to the moderator. The Town of Ocean Ridge will host a community lecture series for the public on February 28th from 6 to 8 p.m. regarding sea level rise ready communities by Alec Bogdanoff, PhD, and Understanding Home Rule and Legislation Impacting Our Community by Lynn Tipton, Florida League of Cities University Director. All right.
We got a proclamation too.
Yeah, where's my proclamation?
Next page. Here.
Next page.
Oh, there it is. I see it. All right, the proclamation, we should have this proclamation before we even do the other thing. The proclamation is the municipal election will be held on March 13th, 2018, and there are 2 town commission seats open for a 3-year term. The qualified candidates are Gail Ascove, Philip Bessler, and Christine DeHasseth. I can't read the rest in Spanish. So after that, I mean, the League of Women Voters, that should be pretty interesting. So everyone should come to that and bring a question.
Can I add one thing to that?
Absolutely.
So a lot of townspeople have walked up to me and asked how many people you can vote for. You can vote for no more than 2.
Okay. Then we will move on to the reports.
Can I
Yes, sir.
just recommend that item 7, which is talking about community lecture series,
Mm-hmm.
I would encourage as many people in town to attend that, especially those that are at this meeting. We're going to talk about sea level rise, we're going to talk about sea level rise, and we will also talk about home rule. So if you are unfamiliar with those two topics, I would strongly recommend that you come to the meeting. It's on August the 28th, from 6 until 8 o'clock. And February. Yeah, February, would I say August? Yeah, sorry, moving it ahead, I'm sorry. February 28th from 6 until 8 p.m. So it should be an interesting meeting, and I encourage you all to attend. And if you've been reading the local paper, you'll see in the paper that there's a number of topics, articles on home rule, and there's quite a few on sea level rise, both of which really involve Ocean Ridge, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. So, thank you.
Thank you, Don. All right, reports. Moving on to the town manager. Jamie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My written report's in your backup. I'll just touch on some highlight items for you quickly. First item is we've identified recently 2 new drain system projects that are listed in that first item. One is a standing water issue at 101 Dolphin Bend, and the other, at the combination of 101 Dolphin Bend and adjacent 111 Dolphin Bend. We had a recent property renovation there, and in the process of that, it created some issues that we've been able to identify with the town's drainage right-of-way in that location. In addition to that, at the corner of Beachway Drive and Osprey Court, since we had done recent paving, that also revealed to us we had some potential standing water issues there, and we have an inline drain system already in place there. Both of these projects, while they might fall under or are anticipated to fall under my signatory authority, I need consensus from the town commission to move forward on them. I would utilize the in-house town engineer as well as in-house contractors to address the solutions for these projects and move forward to fix them in the most expeditious and cost-effective way. But they are new identifications to you as a group, so I just want to make sure I have consensus to move forward. Just to give you a quick snapshot, I believe that the solution currently that we've scoped out on the Beachway Osprey intersection would be the installation of an additional catch basin into an inline drain that is already in location. And the solution at the Dolphin Bend scenario is probably a clearing and improvement and possible swaling of the right-of-way area in a narrow strip of that roadway that has created some difficulties for us since a property in that area was improved. So I just seek your consensus to move forward on those. If by any chance either of these or both of these solutions were to exceed my signatory authority, I would bring back specific proposals for your approval for things that would exceed my threshold to fix them.
Okay. Well, since they are within your budgetary, there are repairs and maintenance to infrastructure, I would presume you would just go ahead and proceed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just give you a little caveat. One of the items that you passed on the consent agenda item earlier was a provision that was a unintended consequence of purchasing policy that essentially would restrict my signatory authority when there was already a service contract in place. So for example, we already have a contract in place with the town engineer, and we may or may not have contracts in place with some of the vendors that would provide solution pieces to this problem. So that was cleared with your approval of that item on the consent agenda, and we would apply that here. But I wanted to make sure, since these came from specific problems, that you're aware of them as a group and conceded to move forward on fixing them on whatever is the best practice recommended.
All right, and that's been approved by the town attorney as well, right?
Well, yes, if we could, and I think I've discussed this with most of you all, that because we have certain agreements with certain vendors, the minute, which is above the $10,000 amount that Jamie has to approve something, The minute that there is another agreement, whether it's $1 or $5, that would need to come to you all for approval. So what I guess what I would suggest that we do is to amend the purchasing code to provide that as long as the item is budgeted, that any of the amounts that have come to you all where you have approved yourself, that is not applied toward the $10,000 cap that Jamie has. Because you would have approved it yourself. It's been in front of you, so therefore, anything else that's out there up to $10,000, he would have the authority to go ahead and approve it without coming, to you, because right now the code provides that if the town has approved any amounts above $10,000 with any vendor, then essentially, technically, he would need to bring that in front of you for your approval, whether it's $1, $5, whatever. So that's what I need to clear up, and that's what I would like to move forward with, enacting an ordinance to go ahead and clear that up and bring that forward to you at your next meeting,
Okay.
if there's a consensus for that.
Yeah, we definitely
Okay.
got that cleared up.
Seems like it is, so, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jamie?
Continuing on, we're in discussions and active staging of the tropical pumping station upgrades. There was a little back and forth between our insurance company. We've come to a quasi-meeting of the minds with them to cover partial reimbursement on that system down there. And then the rest, when it's all said and done, we will try to submit for reimbursement under FEMA. The insurance company and the vendor provider have spoken and had a meeting of the minds, and we're ready to move forward on the proposed fixes there. Next item I have on here is the certified building official. We're searching for a possible in-house solution for a full-time building official and taking on additional capacities in the town that would take a more holistic approach, not only to building official functions, but zoning functions, code enforcement, collaboration, and site management, which is a huge issue of construction issues we deal with here in the town. We have two top candidates that we've been talking to. The number one candidate that I'm negotiating with has countered my proposals that in a way that is larger than my threshold to deal with right now. So I want to finish up the background checks on that and look at those numbers and that math, and then bring it back to you on the March 5th meeting, I believe is our next meeting, for ratification of hire if we get that all resolved.
Okay. Can I go back real quick to the tropical pumpkin station?
Yes, sir.
Do you have a kind of a date certain of when that's going to be repaired?
The holdup was getting clearance on the technical equipment that's being ordered for it. There's a bunch of computer and control cards. We've already put in the fundamental runaround on the system that keeps it running in the case of any particular emergency. What this next phase is going to do is start to change out the actual controllers for the electrical boxes that run the pumps and run the system to permanently reconfigure how it operates and troubleshoots it so that we don't have future problems. It is working today. I don't want anybody to have the impression that it's not working. It is working. What we did was basically bypass a number of redundancy systems to make sure it's working today. And then this proposal, when in this case, Sullivan Pump people come back to put in the additional components, it will permanently affix the system to work the way we intended, which is essentially a redesign from how it had been done in the past slightly.
So when do you think that'll be done?
As
Give any,
quickly,
did they give you any time frame? Thank you for clearing up the fact that it is working now. I just was looking to see when do you think it'll be up to full speed, or at least repaired to what it should.
if I were to guess, because it is
That's all we're looking
an educated guess, I would say 30 to 60 days based on the contractor ordering the technical parts, the controller cards, the various things that they've already spec'd, and they're custom made for.
That's fine. Okay,
these
so 30 to
situations.
60 days.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
The system itself works.
No, I got
regardless of
I'm
this
glad you
stuff.
cleared that up, because
Okay.
it was kind of a
I
misconception.
don't want
you
anybody to
broke
get concerned that
Yes.
they're going to get flooded out in the interim.
That's why I brought it back up. All right, so what's the town contract updates?
Town contract updates, we kind of touched on this when we were talking about the earlier item. We're doing, working with the town attorney, the purchasing policies, the code, the town clerk staff, and the contract database. We are finding that historically, a lot of the agreements and contracts and interlocals and things that the town has in place need to be tweaked and updated and be more compliant with the town's codes and purchasing policies and the expectations of the Attorney General's office and all the other regulatory agencies that are involved with us. So we are going through those. We are finding them, identifying them, as we did on a couple of the issues tonight, and we'll continue to bring forward a few of those as we find them. Many contracts, in example, are extended by letters of extension that are done pretty informally. Eventually, contracts need to be rebid and need to be fully vetted in order to be compliant with today's county and state statutes. So we're working on those issues to get all the contracts in the town to that status.
All right, great. You're working on, and you're,
The final item I have on here, well, I
Yes,
actually have two
yes,
items. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just making sure the town attorney was part of it too.
We include him because he's pretty handy. The final printed item I have here, as you know, we recently, thanks to you and others, we had completed some pervious paving block parking spaces for low-speed vehicles on the Porter crossover. That work, I believe, has been created for 2 spots there. We have a town signature sign coming to that it proclaims what the spaces are for and that you need a town permit in order to park there, and we will have, if approved by you, resident and non-resident rates in order to affect those permits for parking in that space. The sign is on order. It'll go up shortly. The parking spaces are in, and I just wanted to update you. That was a project that you had approved back in the summertime. That's coming to fruition. And the final note I have on here, and I'll entertain any questions you have on the report, is I just want to remind the commission and the public that March 5th, which is our next regular town commission meeting, this is the spoiler alert, is Jeff's last meeting, and we plan to recognize him. And I would like to have a little reception either before the meeting, during the meeting, or at the conclusion of the meeting to have a little cake and social.
Well, depends, is there alcohol involved?
There will not be
If there's
alcohol involved.
yeah, we should do it before the meeting.
We'll buy you a 3-minute timer.
Okay, 10 minutes of cake before the next meeting, and then, but I want the public to know,
Well,
and
thank you very much.
I hate to be the spoiler alert, but we have to let people know that we want to have a little social few minutes to say our appreciation to you and
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you.
split cake and things like that. So if
Okay.
you have any preference, if it's before or
I'm-
during or after, let us know.
Is that in conclusion?
That's the conclusion, unless you have questions.
Well, don't we need to actually do what you ask us to do here? We seek direction to modify the code instead of resident, non-resident rate?
If
I think we already, did,
I think we talked
I
about
didn't
that.
think
Well,
set a
we,
rate.
we talked about it, and I think possibly the best way to handle that would be to amend the code to provide for a schedule of fees that would be adopted by the commission by resolution. So it's not going to be an ordinance, it'll just be, we'll have to do an ordinance to provide for that step in your code. And so then you will have a schedule of fees that you all can charge, and these fees, eventually, I think we will pull the fees from building and planning and put all of those on this one schedule of fees. And so that way you can amend it without having to go through an ordinance process or amending the code. It will just be one hearing in front of you, and you can amend that. And the language that I would put in there would also talk about establishing these permit fees for residents and non-residents, and that would be part of it. And so once it's on that schedule of fees, then that would be valid and we can enforce that. And that would be my suggestion, where we don't call it out specifically because our code has certain provisions in there where we, in certain places where we call out certain fees, and it's kind of in this section and then in that section, and I'm thinking it would be easier, and I've done this in other places, where you have a global schedule of fees, that you can have all of your fees on that one schedule and adopt it that way, and it makes it a little bit easier to keep track of also.
So when will all this occur?
I can bring that to you at your next meeting.
All right, great. Thank you, Brian. Any other questions for the town manager? Don, Jamie, any other questions or comments?
Go ahead.
I was just checking with Jamie to see what, I'm not sure what your preference is, but I would be interested in hearing what the townspeople's preference was as far as having a reception for you before the meeting or after the meeting.
Can't kill this thing,
So I
can
think
you?
that's pretty much up to the public. Unless you guys want to stay around, we could have a really short meeting, or we could do it ahead of time, so,
I got them.
before the meeting.
Before the meeting? That's fine. Before the meeting?
I'm just curious what the,
So we're going to the banana boat, then we come to the
See,
meeting?
yeah, that's what I was thinking, you know, no, we'll have the mobile cart.
If we do it after the meeting, then we can serve wine.
And then after the meeting then. Is after the meeting fine with everybody? Thank you, but after the meeting.
Okay.
how's
The
that?
tough
That's what we
decisions
There's
we
a
have to
tough
make.
decision. See how hard it is to get our $100 a month? It really is tough.
Encouragement.
Yeah.
and we gotta ask.
All right, so
Tracy
is
to
that
have
the
a
last
very
thing for the
short
town
agenda.
manager? All right. Moving on. Brian?
No report.
Okay. Chief?
Cash, you'll find the monthly report. If you look at the Boynton Fire Report, Mr. Bonfiglio did call out a question along response time. I did check with Boynton. It is a typographical error on the dispatcher's part. It didn't take 47 hours, 54 minutes. Somebody changed response time in the beginning, which put it back a couple of days before, so check onto that. Other than that, unless you have any questions, the report is stands.
Any questions for the chief?
Nope.
Thanks, chief. All right, let's move on to the action items. All right, number 12 is confirm the hiring of police dispatcher clerk Brittany Good and police officers LaQuandra Beckford and Aaron Choban. Chief?
As is required by the town charter and customary, I'd like to introduce to you three individuals who have been vetted and completed their background check. Ms. Brittany Good is, with your approval, will start tomorrow as our newest dispatcher clerk. LaQuandra Beckford will start as a police officer tomorrow. LaQuandra comes to us from Orange County Sheriff's Department in detention now and has a law enforcement background. And Aaron Choban, a local gentleman who's coming from the private sector, desires to be a police officer and has made an effort to work in Ocean Ridge. Did a lot of research with family, friends, and this is his chosen location. So with your blessing, I would like to ask you to welcome all of them as our newest employees.
Welcome to the town of Ocean Ridge, and thank you for coming. And we expect good service, and here's our town right here. But thank you so much.
Since it's an action item, don't we need to move?
We do.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I mean, we can say
Welcome.
hello, and then we'll. All right, so who wants to make a motion?
I move that we hire Brittany Good as a dispatcher and Aaron Choban and LaQuandra Beckford as police officers as set forth in item number 12 on our agenda tonight.
Second.
Motion and second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Again, welcome. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Public
you.
comment? You gotta come up, you know, you know the rules. Come on, Bob.
Bob Weiss, Blue 23 Sailfish. I was just curious, are we replacing officers that left, or is this additional staffs we have a bigger police department?
We're filling spots we had already open.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to action number 13, Mr. Higgins, Engineering Inlet for K Drainage Study Update. Welcome, Mr. Higgins, again.
Just so you know, Mayor, we passed out one of Mr. Higgins' handouts. The other one is in your backup book.
Yeah, there was two items that I was tasked to work on. It's One of them was to determine what the drainage capacity is typically within inlet key. And the second item was to look at soil borings to see what the soil types typical for the island are. That's the report you have in front of you. But I'll first cover the drainage capacity. I don't think it's going to be a surprise to you for me to say that the capacity is in the range of 2 to 3 year return frequency. Put that into lay terms, it's basically you're going to have flooding with a just about once a wet season or more. Typical capacities.
Could you backtrack on what you just explained in a less scientific manner so we can understand it?
Sure. The typical annual storm event, a rainfall event, is classified as a 2.33. I won't get into the statistics, how it's arrived at, but that means that it's your biggest rainfall for the summer, and that would be a typical 2-year to 3-year return frequency. What most drainage capacities are today would be 5-year and above, so that you would not see that every summer flooding event. And in fact, if it's municipal, they've pretty much all gone to 10-year return frequency, so that you won't see any road flooding until you reach at least a 1 in 10-year flood event. To give you magnitude, that would be typically 4 inches to 5 inches of rainfall before you'd see street flooding. Is it something you can just go out there and change all of the pipes to 24-inch pipes? No. There's a lot of permitting issues that would preclude that. Otherwise, your engineers would have recommended it years ago. Is there any other questions on the drainage capacity? If not, I'll move to the soil borings. I was able to find one more boring, so that was a total of 4, and they're spread throughout Inlet Key. All of them had either a very significant layer of muck or a significant layer of peat. It starts at about 5 feet down and goes an additional 12 feet or more. To define peat, peat has got organic material in it. It means it's not fully decomposed, which geologically means it's relatively new, kind of surprising to see. But peat is the fully decomposed form of peat. It is compressible. All soils are compressible. To give you a feel for it, there's a compressibility index that clays typically have an index of 0.2 to 0.3. Peat and muck have indexes of 10 to 15. And if you look at the soil borings, it's very loose material. You can drive the boring machine through it quite rapidly. Because of its high compressibility, it is compressing on Inlet Key. I cannot predict how much, but to give you a relative swag, compression could range from 6 to 12 inches max, and then it would be, what happens is it initially starts to compress fairly rapid and then reaches a point of no return. It won't compress any further. If there's a desire to learn, what that compressibility is, how much more there is, it would require an actual boring and laboratory analysis. What it means is most of the structures are being built on pilings, which is good. That means that the structures are not going to settle. But everything else is settling. Something like a new driveway will put enough additional load on the native soils to make it compress. That's why you see the settling gap at the garages. What this also means is the way Inlet Key was built, it was, the channels were dug and that good material was piled on top of unsuitable material. And it'd be way too expensive for the developer to remove that unsuitable. And so you've got good soil up on top, that's the first 5 feet, and then it goes into the unsuitable. What is done typically, if that's encountered on a site, and this is going to be a recommendation in the final report, it is to, whenever there's a tear down and before they start construction, is to go ahead and surcharge the site, which means you take soil material from 10 to 15 feet and stack it onto the site, and that's the extra loading. And you let it sit there for typically 60 days, and then you remove it, and you can, that takes care of, I'm not gonna say 100%, but it will take care of close to 90% of the compressibility of that unsuitable layer. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, so what's our next step, Jamie, on this report?
I've got a question for him while he does that. Is there any inference we can draw from the fact that, on this map that you gave us, the 2 borings indicating peat are essentially on the south end of the island, and the 2 borings that indicate muck are on the north end of the island with respect to rate of compression?
If it truly is different, the peat would compress more, but my suspicion is that they're a lot closer to each other. It's just the geotech, when he lists it and how he describes it, it's like the difference between dark brown and medium brown.
So in essence then, there's really not a significant difference between the north part of the island and the south part with respect to the fact that one has found muck and one's found peat?
I would suspect no.
Okay.
So, there's 2 separate issues. The first issue is something that we can deal with. So I just want to get back to the map on the flow of the drainage.
Sure.
From the report you have here, we have it, a capacity of 2 to 3 CFSs, cubic feet of second water. And then over here, we have something that 4 inches of rain produces 31 CFS. But then you have this method of extrapolating the numbers. So does this amount to that currently the Inlet K existing drainage system can do 2 to 3 CFS, or is it doing the 28 to 42 CFS that's in the next sentence?
2 to 3.
2 to 3, and in a perfect world, it would be
It would be
31?
Yeah.
Okay.
In that graph you're looking at, you're reading 4 inches, that's 4 inches per hour.
Right.
Mr. Higgins, with the information that you have now, can you reasonably estimate the additional degree of compression that will take place? Or there's no way with this information to predict that?
Yeah, there's no way to know it, and that's why I was saying, if there was a desire by the commission to learn that, we would hire a geotech firm and you'd do another boring. And they actually take the material out of the ground, and they take it to the lab.
They actually pound it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have an idea how much that would cost?
I would say in the neighborhood of 2,000.
Okay. Do you think that it would make a difference with respect to the particular spot we did this additional boring, or probably doesn't make any difference on the overall compression rates in the island?
I would suggest it going to the thickest part so that you would get a worse case.
Okay.
Jamie?
Well, you have a couple things before you. Mr. Higgins is working through the various steps of analyzing and compiling and aggregating this data and drawing conclusions and doing calculations based on the findings, on the plans, on the evidence in hand. Eventually, in the steps of his report, he'll be making recommendations, as he said verbally here, about things we could do about it. And the manifestation of those recommendations may be additional steps in the building construction process or additional ordinances or requirements for people preloading sites before they build on them and so on and so forth. On the construction side, on the drainage side, it is clear that our drains, as had been identified by Televac, our drain maintenance company, are scoped. They're being repaired, they're working quite well to their capacity, but as Mr. Higgins has stated, the capacity is probably significantly less than today's standards. So that becomes an issue down the road of how much money, energy, and redesign and upgrade the town might want to apply to that situation based on the negative impacts we're having on Inlet K. Mr. Higgins, you're in about step 2 or 3 of the
The next one is moving into step 4, which is to look at the water table, determine whether or not that there is a so-called spring, which I highly doubt that there is, and that what it is, and this is insight into it from what I've seen so far, the same layer of muck/peat is almost impervious, and so that's a floor for the water table. And so everything in a enclosed area is going to mound up until it finds a relief point. All of the lots that are on the water, it's got an obvious relief point, which is in the backyard. So I'm scheduled to do a map of the water table by measuring the water table in that area and then looking at basically applying rainfall and septic tank drainage and see how much of a mound is created in that area.
And you think that's the cause of the freshwater flow that we have been assigning to artesian wells or the old Spanish River or whatever? You think that's accumulated top water
Yes.
that's being held there?
Well,
And
you're
just
going,
finding its
you're
way
going
back
to
out?
look in, you're going to look into that to determine that.
Yes.
It's not,
That's the next step.
that's the
right?
next step.
Yes.
Right. All right.
When was the last core that, what was the date on the last core that you looked at already?
Yeah, I know that question was raised last time I was here, so I had to go look at it.
Yeah, you
They're
looked at it.
done, they're all done in 2015 and 16, with the exception of one that was a little bit older. And it's actually a septic tank test that did a deep boring, which is typically not done.
25 feet, 15,
Yeah,
25?
25.
Wow.
Would you recommend that you do the core sample that you were just speaking of? Would that provide any further information or benefit as far as the construction sites and the settling and whatnot? Would that help the analysis at all?
No, I would have to work with the geotech, which I'm familiar with doing. I've had some sites where we've, for instance, filled in a lake with 40 feet of muck down in Broward and then worked with the geotech to determine the surcharge quantity, and in 60 days, you could drive a truck on it and not even know that you're on the muck.
Okay. Is there any questions for Mr. Higgins? Any additional questions?
Back to the drainage. If we're at 2 to 3 with 8 to 24-inch pipes, in your professional opinion, if we continue cleaning the pipes and, let's say, upsize the 8-inch ones as needed, what would be the result?
Every little bit will help.
I mean, would it double and triple the CFS?
Well, like I said, the typical for that type of subdivision would be pipe sizes of 18 to 24 inch.
Mhm.
That's what it would take to put it into the 10-year flood protection.
Right, and currently we have some over there that are 8 though, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
How would increasing the catch basins that those pipes flow into right now before they flow out of the intercoastal, would that provide any additional relief as far as the capacity of the system?
No, the limitation on the drainage is the pipe size. There's things you could do, and again, this is going to be down the road with recommendations. You can put in an exfiltration trench, which is an underground perforated pipe in rock, surrounded with rock. That gives you additional capacity because the water would first go in there and exfiltrate out into the groundwater. That's a method. There's also some other ways to, that are fairly expensive. There's a contraption called a storm scepter that provides water quality treatment that would allow you to upsize the outfall pipe, but it'd have to go through the storm scepter first.
And that's because we cannot, I guess there's a state requirement now that the stormwater needs to be treated in some manner before it's dumped directly into the intercoastal.
That's correct, yep.
Okay.
All right, we'll look forward to your next report.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience? Mr. Higgins? All right. Thank you again, Mr. Higgins. All right, moving on before we do that, if you guys want to leave because you got to come in tomorrow, that's fine with us. You don't need to sit through the whole meeting. So moving on to number 14, request for building permit fee reduction. Tracy?
Yes, you had a request from the owners at 31 Harbor Drive South for a reduction in the fee. We had to charge 4 times the fee according to our code, so the total was $7,707.88, and they are requesting a reduction in that. I'm not sure if they're here to speak to you or not.
Is there any background on this, Jamie, or?
Just in town code, when work commences without a permit or there's a complication, the permitting, town code provides for a 4-time penalty fee, if you will, of what the original permit, which is based on value, would cost. Just for your point of reference, state statute prescribes a 2 times permit fee for such an occasion. Town code was adopted quite some years ago to make it 4 times, which is allowable under statute, that it can be more restrictive than the state statute. In this particular case, this gentleman has worked to bring everything into compliance, but the town code still kicks in. So he's here tonight to appeal for
Homeowner's here?
consideration.
Still homeowner here?
I believe
Oh,
so,
come on up.
yes. So you might want to hear from the homeowner.
Evening, Tom Wynn, 31 Harbor Drive South. Thanks for letting me speak in front of everybody. Nice to meet all the neighbors. I'm sorry I'm meeting for the first time this way. And I know I'm at fault. That's obvious. I'm excited to move in to Ocean Ridge. My wife and kids are excited, and we wanted to kind of make this our permanent home, so we were looking for a contractor. We started looking and found someone in November, and I hadn't had an architect yet, and he had someone that he was using, and so I went ahead and tried to use him. I contacted him in December, and because of the holidays, whatever reason, he hadn't really gotten any plans back to me. By that time, it was the end of December, and I was misinformed, and I should have done my due diligence and looked into the town hall's laws. But anyways, that's, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. But so he said, oh, I can do some demolition, and it should be okay as long as we don't build anything. And then in January, I got cited. So that's,
So is this all interior renovation?
yes.
But it's only demolition? It was
Right
only-
now, there was only demolition done, but I'm gonna do a
Right,
full
right, right, but
renovation.
the violation was demolition without permit, from what I'm hearing.
Chief, you want to expand on this a little bit?
I believe Mr. Nguyen got caught in what is not an uncommon occurrence with a contractor who believes that they can start without permits. Any work, it does not appear to have been intentional on the homeowner's part. He has so far come into compliance and he is attempting to comply with all of the town codes at this point in time without any reservation, it appears.
So what's, you have something to say, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of, I guess, good acts that we like to see from our residents and encourage them. I think we do need to attach some sort of penalty, but, and I think the state statute is 2 times the fee, if I remember correctly. We went to 4 times, and I don't remember why. But what I would like to see is you know, if we cut that down in half, at least.
Is that a motion?
The 770788 to half of that. You know, it's kind of like, next time, get a hold of your contractor, but we understand that sometimes these things happen. I don't know how to do the math, because it's some of that includes the penalties, some of that includes the permit fee. So if we can get this reduced to 30, whatever it is, 30,
Take 19, 15 times.
whatever it is.
Jim,
yeah.
So,
Jim,
90
you want
plus
to
the
reduce
DCA
the
fee.
penalty
I want-
fee only
No.
Yeah.
in half, because we can't change the permit fee or the DCA fee.
No, we can't, that's what I'm saying, we
So-
can't
so just
change
look at
the
the
permit
penalty.
fee, we can't change the DCA fee.
Right.
That's $2,000. But I'd like to get the total to the $3,900 total, which would include the $1,950, the DCA fee, and whatever penalty fee would add up to one half of 770788, which would be 28 something, 2,800.
you gotta take 5745, cut in half and add it to the 19. and it's-
However the math works out, that's what I'm proposing that we do.
I have a
So you
couple-
just
So at
basic,
the end of the day, you want the
Wait.
total to be 3,900?
Yes.
Okay.
go ahead, what?
So here's my feeling on this, and Chief, correct me if I'm wrong. You're the first townsperson that I've heard come in front of us and take full responsibility for
Well,
your
it's my
actions.
house, so-
Say that you blew it, you know, would you say an ounce of prevention. Since you were alerted to this, you've been totally cooperative. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, and I think this is one of those rare cases, because I usually hate cutting fees, where I don't know why we would penalize Tom. I would do like a wrist slap. I would say, here's $1,915 plus 47, and then some nominal amount.
That's what it's working out
To
to
make a
That's
motion.
not a nominal amount. You're charging him an additional
An additional,
2,000?
no,
2,800?
no.
No.
The total
I'd say
would be
exactly.
39.
Just make a motion.
Here, let me do it this way. I move that we reduce the penalty so that the total amount paid equals 30, let's say, 30,
Is it
$3,800.
$3,853.94?
Right.
That's
So-
half the,
Exactly.
Okay.
So the pyramid fee would be in there, $1,950, the DCA fee, $4708, and that gets you to $2,000, so the penalty is 18. Now, I would entertain an amendment if you want to reduce that a little bit
Yeah.
more. I don't have a problem.
Well, I'm talking.
Well, you
reduce
make
it
the motion,
substantially.
and
I make
then
the
make,
motion that
then
that we
make the
reduce it.
motion.
And so we can have, I'll make that motion, we can have a discussion about it.
Well, no, we have to have a second first.
Yeah, exactly.
I second.
You do second.
Okay.
Okay, so have a discussion. So is the consensus to basically not have any penalty fee? Is that the consensus?
No, he cut-
No, he says, but then he'd say he'd amend his motion.
I would
See
be,
what I'm
I would,
saying?
I would consider an amendment to the motion. Let's have a discussion on it. So tell me why it should be
Ron, I'm
less.
saying that, no. You made a motion, and your motion is to split it by 2. That's your motion. It was
Yes.
seconded. Now, the discussion is, well, maybe I want to make my motion so it's a little
No.
less.
Okay, so,
No,
Yes,
I'm not-
you're going to amend your motion, so
I'm not amending my motion. I'm saying, let's have a discussion. Why do you think it should be less?
hopefully somebody's better at math than we are. So, we have a permit fee of $19.50. We don't disagree with that. Then there's a triple penalty, which comes to, what was it, Mike? I think it was $5,200.
$57.45.
Now you divide that in half, and you're charging this gentleman $2,800 in penalty.
Okay, what?
No.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion?
That's
Okay.
the math.
No, that's not
Well-
what I moved.
The man, believe me, there has been other, it has been other people that do come up in the last 18 years. They have come up, one or two, believe it or not, but we really appreciate the fact that you have come into the town hall and you have been helpful to the chief and everything else. So if you want to do this and you want to at least slap the man on the wrist, or that you want to say, hey, look, how about $200? Okay,
We
so,
appreciate your honesty. Right.
and be done with it. So-
So 19, 15, 47, 88, and 200?
I'm just saying, just add, the penalty fee would be $200, that's it. And then let Tracy figure it out. That's her job. Okay, she's the clerk. Okay, so,
I'll accept that amendment to my motion.
there's a
Second.
there's a second to that amendment? Okay, all
No, the
those.
seconded, yes. Seconded? Seconded? Okay.
Okay, second the motion, all those in favor, any other discussion? Hearing no, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, thank you, thank you, sir.
I appreciate the consideration of the committee.
May
All
I
right.
suggest that the board members take a math course?
Nobody's got, yeah, well,
Bring a calculator.
Steve got his phone over here, but his fingers don't go fast
No,
enough.
I'm telling you, that's the number.
All right, so moving on to number 15 on the action items. Possible consent to proposed insurance carrier settlement, oh, we already did
We
that.
did that.
All right, so moving on to resolutions. Tracy, you want to read this resolution?
Sure, Mayor. Resolution number 2018-01, a resolution of the Town of Ocean Ridge, Florida, urging the state legislature to resist preempting local governments on matters of home rule and local control.
Jamie?
Yes, sir. We've gone back and forth on this, and I think you know that sometimes resolutions are late in doing anything, especially when you're talking about the legislature, which is in active session right now. In fact, some of our most egregious issues, like vacation rental preemption, is up again tomorrow in committee and continues to evolve, and not necessarily in a good way as it moves down the pike. So this resolution is somewhat generic in nature, but we, in the 31 years I've been doing legislative advocacy in Tallahassee, I have not seen a legislature as egregious as this one in terms of trying to preempt home rule and local control issues. And the purpose of this resolution is to educate our public, as well as all of you, of course, and anybody that's interested in it, because we would forward this to them, to make it known that we don't appreciate that the legislature is trying to preempt local control on issues that are very important to our residents because they impact our residents here. All the whereases and the therefores in this resolution address those concepts. We decide to steer away from specific legislative items. I've been sending you all daily, sometimes updates on calls to action to contact the legislators on some of these issues that are most egregious to us. And thank you to all of you that have been responding to that. But this is for education and to send a statement that we're not happy with what they're doing at the state legislative level.
Could you explain a little bit of the most egregious one to the audience so they can understand?
Well, let's use vacation rentals as an
That's the main
example. We get lots of calls, lots of information on vacation rentals. People will report to us all day long that they see at HomeAway or Vrbo or Airbnb, et cetera, homes in Ocean Ridge that are announced for short-term rentals. Prior to 2011, the town passed an ordinance that restricted short-term rentals to 30 days or more, plus some registration steps. If certain versions of the vacation rental bill moving through Tallahassee were successful right now, the ability for us to call that shot and set those standards would be completely preempted. Currently, Senate Bill 1400 and the matching House bill, I think it's 773, by Stubbe and LaRosa, are looking to do just that. They are, fortunately, the version that is in play at the moment will preserve our pre-2011 30-day requirement. But there's a lot of feeling that once that gets approved, the follow-up bill in the following year would come back and try to remove that grandfather status of the local control to set the limitation. The angle or aim of the legislature is to preempt vacation rentals statewide from any local control, so that all short-term vacation rentals would be controlled through Tallahassee state agencies and the legislature. This type of legislation is most impactful in a negative way on coastal communities for the most part, because these are the target communities where people want to come in, pack a 3-bedroom house with 16 people in the middle of your residential neighborhood and have a fun time for 3 days and then go away. And currently, there is precious few things that we can do about that. Even under our current 30-day restriction, et cetera, the only thing going for us is that we have the 30-day restriction in place right now, and that is preserved under the current legislation, which allows for that grandfathering of the 2011 standard. There were additional exemptions made starting in 2014 that would allow us to modify those ordinances, but only to make them less restrictive, not more restrictive. I hear from all the residents all the time that this is a problem, this is something we need to have stronger tools, stronger controls, more local control over, and in fact, exactly the opposite's happening in Tallahassee. There are so many bills. They have a travel bill up that's the same thing, to preempt local officials and regulations on that. There is a bill up that is prescribing that local elections will occur on specific dates and those dates only. These are all local government preemption issues. And this, circling back to this resolution, this is to underscore that as local government residents, officials, administrations, et cetera, this is a full-on attack towards local government control where these matters matter most, which is where we deal with them every day.
Thank you,
So-
Jamie. So just call your, or email your state legislatures.
And just to add a little humor to this, and there's not much humor in it, the Florida Senate Community Affairs Committee on Tuesday, this was last week, gave a green thumbs up to a bill that prohibits cities and counties from regulating where residents could grow vegetable gardens. So we don't have any ordinances in Ocean Ridge right now on where you can grow a vegetable garden, but if the state has its way, and this one passes, which I don't think it would, I could grow corn and tomatoes and whatnot in my front yard, and I'd be fine.
Could I have chickens?
You'd have to have a hat.
And those ears that fall over on my line are mine, okay?
You got it.
Thank you, Jamie. All right, moving on to
Got it.
town.
I think
Mayor,
Oh, we
if I
have a,
could-
come on up, Betty. I didn't
and
even
plus-
see you over there. You didn't wave your red flag yet. Like
Just a quick comment, if any of the residents are interested in links to the bills, to the specific issues, please just get in touch with me through email, whatever. I'll be happy to send out those links, those updates, anything you might need to look at the specifics of each issue and how it impacts us.
Is there any chance that we could canvass the town of Ocean Ridge and send a letter with all the names on it? I don't understand what legislators don't understand about the best government is when it's the closest to the people they're governing. I don't care whether it's federal government, the state government, or county government, or city government. We elect people to govern us who know what we want and who we are. And if we could get a letter with a whole string of names on it, it might have meaning.
Can I take you to Tallahassee with us, Betty?
Name and address is Betty Bingham, Ocean Avenue.
One other example, the state also has a bill moving forward that proclaimed to preempt all tree trimming ordinances and regulations from all local governments. Fortunately, that bill has been modified to focus on power utility rights-of-ways and flooding and water management issues. So it's been curtailed back a little bit, but it's just another example of total preemption attempts that are following the philosophy of the current legislature.
Oh, you want to make the motion?
Yeah, so I make a motion, we accept resolution number 2018-01 as described in the town agenda of February 12th.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, or resolution carries. All right. Town Commissioner comments, designate town representative for beach renourishment issues and projects. Vice Mayor Bonfiglio.
Yes, okay. There is presently a dispute and ongoing discussions, I believe it's between Manalapan, the county, and Lake Worth, if I remember correctly, based on staff meeting, dealing with the control of the sand moving from north to south and renourishing the beach.
Yeah, South Palm Beach?
Yeah,
South Palm Beach.
We don't have anybody at the table talking about this, and we could be significantly impacted by whatever they decide or not decide on exactly how to do it. And apparently, it's building structures into the ocean that stop the flow of water, and when you stop the flow of the water from north to south, you stop the flow of the sand and the deposit of the sand onto the various beaches. And without somebody sitting at the table, you wind up with the scraps. So I'm suggesting that we send somebody from the town, a town representative, to sit in on these meetings and try to protect the town's interests in these discussions.
All right, well, who's when's the next person's seat up? Is that yours?
That would be mine.
So, Steve, you and Don are gonna be here the longest, right?
Well, yeah, I came
So,
in
I'm
with Don
Well, I'm
last
saying,
year.
I'm saying, yeah, so if we're gonna do it now, so I'm just
It sounds like it
suggesting.
fits into Don's wheelhouse of rising.
Yeah, because he's got the rising water deal
Yeah.
now.
I mean, I'll be glad to do it if you want, but.
Yeah, but you're out of here in
You're
November.
gonna just have
I'm
to
gonna have to
transfer it over.
resign to run, that's right.
Just to simplify the problem, the groins in South Palm Beach stop the sand from reaching Manalapan. So if
Yeah.
the sand then stops reaching Manalapan, Manalapan could then say, well, why are we shipping our sand to Ocean Ridge?
Well, yeah, that's essentially the issue, and
Brian, you there's a little more to it than that with the, with the fact of pumping sand over from our agreement. So can you expand on just?
yeah, and that agreement is.
Well, I mean, the
expired.
agreement that was done many years
Yeah, but
ago
that's
has since
automatic.
expired. However, Palm Beach County is one of the thing, or I guess, one of the conditions of the agreement and the parties at the time, when the agreement was entered into, anticipated the expiration of the agreement, but there was a continuation clause that Palm Beach County will continue to operate and continue to pump sand south of the inlet. So just the expiration of the agreement does not impact, it doesn't impact the sand transfer station. I think one of the reasons that, it'd probably be important for someone here to be at the table was just to understand and hear what's happening, because I have no idea. I mean, if the installation of groins up there would impact, or it may help, the deposit of sand down here. It's, so.
All right.
That's,
Well, everybody in agreement that Don, since you're doing the rising water, you can do the flowing sand?
Yeah, I'm
As well?
also on that water task force alternate seat, but that has nothing to do with the intercoastal, but I'd be the water guy.
All right, so you're the
Don's
Aquaman.
referring to, he was just have you been officially appointed by the county
No,
yet?
I just
Still
put
going
in the
through
last
that?
application, so.
Through the League of Cities, Don was the applicant submitted for the Water Management Advisory Task Force at the county level, which has to still be ratified by the county commission. So
That should be coming up.
he's
All right,
he's
so-
rapidly becoming the water guy.
Fresh water, salt water, doesn't matter, right, Don?
You got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do it.
All right, so we're all in consensus that we'll put Don on that? All right. Thank you. All right, I guess that's it. So I guess meeting adjourned. Thanks for coming, everyone. See you next month.